Hello, we are now recording. This is Michael Tabb. We are in week two of March 2018. I have over 40 students in the classes of writing for film and animation, as well as character creation and development. So the grading is slow going. If you've gotten your feedback, congratulations. If you haven't, know that I am working on it tirelessly because that's just the situation we're in. If I start answering questions, it doesn't sound like anybody's asked on this recording. It's because I see a chat window that does not show up in the recording from GoToTraining. So I am not talking to myself. I'm not inventing voices in my head. I'm not crazy. I'm picky, and I'm honest, but I am not crazy. Uh, let's get this party started. The first and most important thing I do at the top of every session is allow any students who have questions to ask them. It's okay. Here, there are only great questions, and I want to hear them all. So, if anybody has a question, oh, by the way, when you are not talking, because the speakers can create a sound loop. If I speak here, it comes out on your speakers, but then goes in through your microphone at the same time. It creates what's called a time delay sound loop. I don't know if that's what it's called. That's what I call it, and it'll start creating an echo in the computer program. So if you are not speaking or not choosing to speak, mute yourself by hitting the green lit microphone button on the left-hand side of your GoToTraining control panel, and therefore, perfect. You're all muted. All right. Now unmute yourself as you wish to ask questions or interact. Now, anybody who has any questions, please feel free to unmute your microphone and ask away, or type it into the chat box that nobody can see but us. It's our secret little chat box. And we are waiting for questions. There are none.
Hi.
Oh, great.
Hello.
Hello, Michelle. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm staying above water, which is the first goal.
That's all right.
Luckily, it's a lot of students this month, so you can tell. Oh, uh, Miss Levine has the flu. You can see by my watery eyes I have extreme allergies going on right now. My eyes.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. So, what can I do for you today? What questions do you have? It's an open floor.
Okay. I noticed in the example that you gave us for the structure for the plot points
Billy the
was a
Boat.
little different. Yeah, I like that, by the way. It was pretty cool because it was really simple, but it gave us the point, right?
That's right.
So I'm trying to model mine after that. We're
Mhm.
supposed to have, for clarity, we're supposed to have each answer as one sentence, correct?
That is correct.
No
What? And
compound.
there's a reason for that. Um, when people in the industry ask you about your story, they, if you get long-winded, they will get the impression that you don't know your story well enough. And that's why I constantly use that quote from Einstein, which is, if you can't state it simply, you simply don't know it well enough. That is a real quote from Albert Einstein, and it's really important in writing when you're pitching. When people go, "So what's your climax? So what's the worst thing that happens? Who's your antagonist? What's he trying to do?" If people ask simple questions, you have to be able to rip out certain answers. And do it in a way that's effective, so that people know, wow, this guy really knows the story, and it makes it simple and easy to understand. Because when you diatribe into long paragraphs, as I'm prone to do, and I think a lot of writers are, because we are loquacious, otherwise we wouldn't be writers. When we get that way, sometimes it's hard to absorb that kernel of knowledge they're really looking for in the expansive word choices we would naturally tend to put it in. So, one of the things I have to teach you, because it's so important in screenwriting and it's such a technical skill set, writing screenplays, is to make sure you can put things in the simplest, clearest, most succinct terms and really get that message across.
Okay, I understand that. Now, as far as the characters, I noticed that you stated that one of the characters was the nerd. Okay, is that his actual name, or are you being vague about the character at that point? And if so, do we need to be detailed about our
Um,
characters?
that's a good question. That's a very good question. Um, sometimes when I'm outlining and I'm designing the characters to fit all their proper roles, I don't give them a name. Sometimes I just call it the reflection character because I go through a whole process when I pick character's name. I usually go to a baby book which has all these different names in alphabetical order, and it tells you what the name means because a lot of names have meanings, and I want the names that I pick for characters to have meaning. So sometimes I won't know the character's name yet. Sometimes I'll assign it a quality or just define it in my outline as this is the antagonist. Other times I'll use a name. You will have in your assignment with the 3 act structure, you will also have the character breakdowns of all the different characters. So if you've already picked a name and it's in there and stuff like that, then you can use that name again for the outline. And if I see a name and I don't know what it means, I can scroll down and look at your character creations, your character statements, and see which character you're referring to. But if not, you can always just put antagonist. The antagonist does this, the whatever. You know, you can simplify in a sense. Yes, you don't. Part of the assignment, this assignment, you'll have to have names by next week because you're writing the actual script. But because I haven't made an assignment yet to pick names, I didn't want to make that a requirement when you're working so hard on finding and nailing down structure.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions?
I did. I didn't know if anybody else had a question. That's all I was saying.
Just keep going because believe me, you're just giving them time to write down more ideas for questions that they have. So go ahead and
Okay.
make another one.
Okay. So I noticed that your story was very linear. It went from point to point to point to point to point, although it was for a smaller or shorter script or short film. Um, I guess my question is, how can we ensure that we keep it linear? Like I noticed that yours was more so in the same location. Do we need to stay in the same location within each act, or
No,
can that
no,
shift?
no, no.
Okay.
There are no limitations, though. I mean, I do recommend that you consider if you want to go and make this film, this short film, this proof of concept, so that you can
Uh,
try to get the feature film made. Like we're designing a film with 3 act structure, with character arcs, with all the time. You design characters so that once you've written the short film, you can really expand it into a feature. That's kind of the key of what we're working on here. And then, but if you when you finish writing this 10 page or shorter script, you can then go shoot it if you've written it in a way that doesn't require things that will be very difficult for you to afford to make it.
okay.
So I would say if you wanted to set the whole thing in a setting like I have this script that I wrote that my baby my it's a story about what it means for me to when I come of age to grow up. It's about how life isn't about all the things you think it is, and that it's just about really how you treat the people in your life, because that's what gives your life quality. Um, and when we're young, we have to learn that lesson that we seem to think of everything first about getting ahead, and then forget about the people who are with us on that journey and don't put them as a high priority, and it's not right, and it really tears apart relationships, and it teaches you how to act like an adult. So yeah, I have something important to say. I do it. I write it out, and we're getting ready. But I wrote the whole movie takes place over Christmas holidays in a beach house so that it would be easy to film so that when I get the finances to make this movie a feature film, the whole thing, there are 2 scenes that are bookends at the very end that take place somewhere else, but the rest of it is all in a simple house. Now it's a beach house, it should be nice. That's what I'd like because I want it to be an attractive film to look at. But simple setting can help you. Just make sure that the setting suits the material, that suits the genre. If you want to write a horror film, then perhaps it's better to set it in a dark, abandoned, falling apart house in a Victorian style on a hill in the middle of the night in a storm than it would be to set it in, you know, Uncle Jesse's backyard with his dog. So you'll pick things that fit the mood. So, but the only limitations on the number of settings or where you do it is what suits the story, and if you plan on making it, consider that consider what is within grasp of making it. But even if you're writing for something you can make, you still need to make the locations make sense for the genre and the story itself. You're not just writing because you can shoot it in your house. So I'm going to set this in a bedroom and a living room, and I can shoot it all in my house, and that makes sense. But if it's a movie about something that's not about home and being home and family at home, then you should not choose those as your settings. So it's a bit of this, a bit of that to figure out exactly what it is you should include.
Okay, that
Does
makes
that help?
sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because that was my struggle because I'm not sure if you had time to look at it or you remember from my previous course with you when I turned in the story about Erica Reed, A Crime Worth Committing, and how that's a crime story. So I'm trying to make sure I fit it in for the short film in the right setting so that when it hits feature, or before it hits feature,
Right.
it looks appealing. See, that's my struggle right now because I'm like, I don't know where to start the story for the short film if that makes sense.
Well, if it's a thriller, start with where did the first person get terrified or deeply hurt, if not killed? Where is the person? If it's a murder mystery, you might start it with the murder,
Okay.
and set the tone right away. Um,
Okay.
Now, the other thing is you may choose just to start the protagonist. Think of the when I start a film, the first thing I usually do is I do remember the tone, but I also think it's extremely important to start the film right away in a situation that is stressful for your protagonist, that completely and clearly emphasizes what their character flaw is. And if you do it well, you'll also show what that character flaw means that they're good at, because you can use that skill later in the movie at the end to get them out of deep trouble. So, for example, if the person is a recluse and they're all by themselves and they live in a remote area, you may have the fact that their skills include that they can go chop their own wood from trees, that they're strong, that they can hunt, that they know how to fix their own generators to create electricity where they are. So, people that have a certain, whatever the flaw is, it will lead you to what they're good at as well. So, don't forget that. It's two sides of a coin because every flaw has a positive attribute, most of them. Even in the worst of all possible flaws, that somebody kills people, is a killer. Well, he has the conviction of his actions. He is not afraid to do anything. He will go to any distance to get done what needs to be done. And in some ways, that is an incredible benefit and a skill for a character to have. Now, we may not like it in the way he does it, but remember that every flaw has a positive spin to it. And you play that to get us to appreciate the good elements of the character, because with every character, we're a little bit torn as to how much we like them because of the flaw and how it shows itself in their life. Sometimes it makes us more sympathetic than unhappy with them, depending on what that flaw is.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay. Now I feel like I'm
Did I answer
starting in
your
the right
question?
direction.
Sometimes I just.
Yeah, it feels like I'm. No, no, that definitely answered it because now it gives me more insight as to where to start because I started, like a day ago or whatnot, like just plotting out points
Right.
of things that would happen in the actual film, but being a short film, I'm trying to make sure I give it just enough action to
Stage one.
hook my audience.
Remember,
Yeah,
you're in stage one. In stage one,
yeah,
because you include the turning points, but you also include stage 1 and 6, which is
right.
the bookends of the story. Stage one, you include two things. One is one of the three types of crisis that is a normal, everyday crisis for this person, the kind that would happen every day in their current life or could happen every day, whether it's running late to get the kids to school or whatever, but it's a crisis to them because this to them is important. And then B, how that reveals that character's flaw. that is where you have to start a short film. Because if you're going to have a character arc, because you don't have any other time to put that information in there, you need to get that in on page one, so that at the bottom of page one, you're having something happen to this character that is an inciting incident or turning point one, whatever you want to call it. That is the first moment of, oh crap, I'm in a little bit over my head. I need to consider changing things.
Okay.
And it's usually triggered by whatever the person does as their flaw.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, I think I'm out of questions now.
Excellent. Excellent. This is my job. This is what I do. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? If you're talking, your microphone's not on. And if you're not talking, it's because you have no questions, because the class is so brilliantly written that it leaves you with no questions whatsoever. We are done. We know it all. Okay, I just went into a strange British accent for no good reason at all. Thank you for the laugh on the chat. I appreciate it. We all need to laugh because life is hard, writing is hard. So you got to just make up for it with, enjoying your life because, well, that's what writing is. Writing is pleasure. To me, it's a great way of enjoying everything. I hope you guys are enjoying the writing process. So, since nobody else has questions, I am going to quickly go over um, one of the persons left online. Um, okay, well, it doesn't matter because we are talking to you. Um, okay, so I'm going to go over quickly what the assignments are for this week. In character creation and development, if you are in that class, you are writing a character dossier. You're building off of the fact that you have chosen a premise and you have something to prove, something important, something that means something that is not cliche, something that is original and personal to you, and will hopefully make the world a better place if the world learns this, or at least a more knowledgeable place about how to handle things. Um, it's a hypothesis about how the world works, and it's something that we haven't seen told in that way before. And so now that you have that, it's time to design the characters to promote that belief and the character that's going to fight that character in trying to realize that belief. So you have a protagonist with an inner and an outer journey. These are the important things. You'll have a premise. You have a protagonist whose inner journey proves the premise. That means that when they go from A to B in their emotional character inner journey, when you define their behavior traits and how they change because of what they go through in their outer journey and what they're doing physically in the story, it will end up the cure to the character. The cure, there's a character flaw, and it arcs into a character cure. And the flaw is what they need to learn to not do, which is probably usually what we would call the common misbelief, basic knowledge, like in any cliche. It would be what you would think the cliche would be correct, but it's not true. That would probably have to do with what the flaw is, and then what they arc to, which is the exact 100% opposite of what the flaw was, is the character cure. And those two things are total opposites, and they could not possibly coexist in the same human being in any circumstance because they're opposites. Anyway, so you're going to plan out that, and then you're going to give the outer journey, which is what is it they're trying to accomplish in the physical world. It's not form a relationship. We don't know what that looks like. We need something that has a clear picture, that is physical, that if when they get married, they know they've succeeded. When they won the competition, they know that they succeeded. When they've slayed the dragon that has kept the whole kingdom in fear, uh, there you go. So you get the idea. So it's well on that physical journey they learn the inner journey, and then you have to come up with your antagonist and what they are trying to accomplish, which does not directly relate to your protagonist, but whatever that action is the antagonist is trying to accomplish, it cannot be accomplished if the protagonist achieves what they're trying to do, which may have absolutely nothing to do with your antagonist. The idea, if each person is trying to win a race, then the other guy is eventually is going to have to lose if you win, and vice versa for either character. So it's not just that they're trying to stop each other, because that would be just designing a character who's not real, who's just there to affect another character. In real life, we're trying to do things. We're not trying to change someone else unless it benefits us. And we're trying to do something, and this person makes that life difficult, so we wind up going head to head with somebody. That can happen. But it's because we have something we're trying to get done, and each of these characters need to be proactive in trying to get done what each of them is trying to do. And then because each of them are trying to do something, these other people, whatever they are, each of these two characters are trying to do, well, they if one of them succeeds, the other one fails. Because they can't both succeed at this one thing, because one would stop the other one from succeeding, and vice versa. And then after you do that on the dossier, do not forget to read extremely carefully how to write and format a character introduction in a script. This is really important for all of you in screenwriting class as well, in the writing for film and animation. The formatting is not only crucial, which is the name in all caps that you're going to use throughout the script, the age right next to it, surrounded by commas or parentheticals, whichever you prefer. I'm fine with either. A small description that only shows how the character is totally unique. Don't give a description that says blue jeans, t-shirt, uh, uh, whatever, and brown hair, because all those things are totally average. You know, if he wears a pirate hat, and it's a modern day film, that's something you would mention. You know, give us a sense of who the character is, and then you have the character doing something. And whatever you're having them do in that sentence, it's only one sentence. John, 36, wears, a, wears an eye patch and a hook on one hand, runs across the bow of a pirate ship in front of a modern audience, and, grabs a rope and swings to the top mast. Yeah, of a stage pirate ship. So you're illustrating this guy is an actor and he does this stuff. Maybe he slashes the thing. You give him an action that shows you part of who his character is. Sorry. Um, and if it's a protagonist, think about ways, like, for example, if the protagonist has a flaw of being klutzy, then you would have them tripping and falling and crashing into the crowd. Or, they could do something that breaks their arm right away and you're cutting to the hospital. It's like, you again. The doctor's like, you again. You're setting up the character's flaws. So remember to give characters strong entrances that really tell us who they are. Um, and it's just the first sentence: name, age, a defining description, and an action that really tells us something about this character, and focusing on the flaw if it's a protagonist. And if it's an antagonist, it should focus on their incredible deft skill, which puts our protagonist at a disadvantage, since both of their outer journeys are not going to be able to get done if the other one succeeds in theirs. So you want to make sure your protagonist is outmanned or outmatched by the antagonist, so that you create an underdog feeling for your protagonist, so that you know that your protagonist has a lot of work to do, and it's going to take all his gut strength and wit in order to defeat him. Um, and then after that, you just answer a bunch of questions, just sussing out, what do you think they look like? What do you think they wear? What do they keep in the refrigerator? You ask the 10 questions from Bernard Thibault, or however you pronounce his name. It's French. From that character's personality, to try to discover who that character is for you, now that you know what they're trying to do and what their arc is, and what's going on. And that's it. You're exploring your two chief characters in character class, which makes sense, that are going to be on the opposite sides of proving your premise. Now, for the other class, for writing for film and television, no, writing for film and animation, different. Yeah, television's a different class. You are actually going to be giving us your revamped. I'm going to try to get them to you in the next day or two. All the rest of them, your revamped foundation information on character, considering all the notes that I give you. And then you're also doing the not the format, the outline of structure. So you're doing stage one, then turning points one through five, and stage six of what your story is with the characters that you have designed, trying to prove what it is you're trying to prove. So the turning points are all going to emphasize the journey to accomplish the outer journey, while the stages are basically the two sides of the coin that's going to show the extremes of the character arc, where they start with their flaw and where they end with the cure to that flaw. And it should make sense. Uh, does anybody have any questions on what each of those turning points are, or stages, or anything like that? Because I do have a whole video on that, and I don't want to have you sit here and babble about something you all feel you're pretty darn familiar with. Does anybody have any questions on any of that? Okay, I will take that as a no. And that's it. I wanted to make sure I answered. See, it was a good thing you asked, Ms. Young, all those questions, because otherwise nobody would have asked any questions. Um, all right, so go ahead. Your microphone's on again.
Yeah, I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, that was accident. But yeah, I'm glad I had those. I
I
did. I'm
want to
glad I
help.
had.
That's what I'm here for.
Oh, well, I do have one more question. I'm glad you said that about character. For the short film, will we see all of our characters? Because I gave a
No,
full list. Okay,
you don't
okay,
have to.
ooh,
The only characters
okay.
you're going to definitively need, for sure, are the protagonist and the antagonist, which is why those are the only two things I demanded everybody post in your week one work. Um, the other characters you will probably need when you expand it into a feature film. You may have them in your short. You can use them. Um, I'm not saying anybody shouldn't use them who wants to use them if it helps the establishing of the story that you want to establish, and the journey, and the proof of concept, if they're important to the tone and the genre. Like if it's a for example, if it's a thriller like yours is, and if the protagonist is a normal person put in this thriller situation, uh, and the antagonist is the killer, obviously, or something like that, then you may want to add somebody like a sheriff or a law enforcement officer who may be kind of like a mentor or a reflection character, because they too would be trying to solve the same crime. And that may be important to show that this character is not the law, that character is the law, this is how they think, and then this, because of our character's flaw, this is how they're going to go about it differently than the lawman would, if you want to do that. So I'm not saying you don't have to use them. I'm not saying you do have to use them. I'm saying it's up to you. But chances are you won't get to use them all, because 10 pages is not a lot of time. And we do want to show that we can write a complete story, a single story. That's what makes this class different from things like television or a video game, which is like you're doing a level or you're doing a simple thing like that. In this story, you're writing a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you want to make sure it does all those things for the audience, for the reader, so it shows that you can do those things in telling a story as much as it shows that it's a good concept for a story.
Because I know, okay, well that works. And yeah, because I know my genre is actually like crime. It's not thriller.
Okay.
So, but I think that it still would play a major part. What you just said in that context, that makes a lot of sense
Yeah,
for
because
what I'm
the
attempting to do
antagonist in
here.
a crime story may be another criminal.
Yeah, right.
And
Okay.
then the protagonist may wind up using the law.
Uh-huh.
Enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Exactly.
Yeah, that methodology to catch the other guy so that he can get away with something. But then, and then the question is if the cop lets him go at the end, or if the cop takes him down too, or if he doesn't want to, or he brings the cop in on it.
Right.
A lot of different things could happen in that scenario.
Very true. Okay.
All right. Do you have any other questions?
No, that's it. That was the last one.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Ms. Wilder, Ms. Levine, are you good? I think I have a question. Good. This is from the chat window. Trying to word it out right now. Okay. She's working on the phrasing of her question, and we wait with bated breath. Dun, 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 dun. Super teacher to the rescue. So did everybody see Black Panther?
I
Grim
was just thinking that. I didn't want to
on the
ask.
Oscars. Black Panther was great. It had moments that reminded me of some classic great cinema, like the fighting, the way they fight for the kingship on that waterfall. It reminds me tremendously of Robin Hood. How Robin Hood to get past Sherwood Forest has to fight Little John, who winds up being his friend on the bridge. I don't know if you remember that, but
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
there are all these little beats from that movie that are wonderful and very different homages to classic films that show such a breadth of understanding of filmmaking while it's telling a really fun, cool, and original story. So it's original enough because, Robin Hood was a period adventure film. It's not what this is Black Panther is a science fiction action film. So,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, and it was really cool how they were able to. I know from the lynda.com
Yes.
tutorial we watched last week, how he was saying basically he showed how the rhythm goes within the story, how it's like up and down, up and down, up and down.
Yep.
And that's exactly how I felt when I watched all 2 hours and 30 minutes of that movie. It
Yep.
was like, oh, we got it. Oh no, we don't. Oh, we got it. No, and I'm trying to keep that same concept with my story as well because that was brilliant.
It was. It
Yeah.
was. And I love the climax. I love the twists. Uh,
Yes.
I knew who was going to grow into being the bad guy. So I knew it was
Yeah.
coming, but I didn't know where it was going to come or how it was going to come. And I loved the I loved I just really adored so much of that film. It was so much fun. You know,
Yeah.
um, it was great. And did anybody see the Oscars?
I missed it. I actually went to see Black Panther at the same time the Oscars was on.
Okay, that's fine. I DVR'd the Oscars. I don't like to sit there and wait for everything, so I DVR it, and then when I was done working on what I had to work on, I go to lay down and I fall asleep watching it, and then I pick it back up where I left off, and I can fast forward commercials and all that. That's
Yeah.
all right. We have our question. Can we use side characters as our main characters in our stage structure assignment, like how Roger Rabbit had his animation shorts before the bigger movie, but Eddie, the movie protagonist, wasn't present. Ah, yes. Can you open without the? Well, look, in a feature film, you can open a film for mood. If you're not going to feature a uh, 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 look, with a short, here's what I would do. I would start, because you only have 10 pages, not 120 to work with. I would start with the protagonist, and and if they did a short version, think about it. If they did a proof of concept of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, they would not do that little bitty movie with him on the set with the baby who talks like a gruff old cigar smoking man. You realize that at the end of that scene, that is just crazy slapstick, showing how silly and funny the movie can be. And then we get to our protagonist and the fact that they've lost all hope, and they don't believe in making the world a better place necessarily. And he's not a happy guy. He's very miserable, and he seems to have no real good friends. Um, he's just a private eye. Uh, I would think that if you're making a proof of concept of that film, you'd be starting with him getting a case. He gets a case at the inciting incident. You set up his flaw. He gets the case from Jessica Rabbit, who is the femme fatale, and then he decides to take the case and go out on the journey. Uh, that's how I think it would work in this format, though the idea of doing a strong, hard genre opening of a film works. In the time frame that you have to tell a story, I don't think it does as well, if that makes sense. I hope that helps. Does anybody else have any questions? I feel like I missed a bit before I came in. We're not plotting out an entire movie, just an important portion, correct? You are plotting out a three-act story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. It doesn't have to be the whole script. It's not a whole feature script, but it still has a beginning, middle, and an end, and the structure to it. Even a scene can have a beginning, middle, and an end. So what you're doing is you're doing a proof of concept, which is of a. It's basically you're showing somebody on a small scale what a movie would be if you made it on a feature film scale, but you don't have the money yet to shoot a feature film. You do a small version of it and show that to people to get them excited about financing your film or producing it. So, but we also need in this program to give you writers a chance to write a story that shows you can write a complete and closed beginning, middle, and end to a story, that it feels finite and it's not like an episode or something of something where you keep coming back. This is, you can tell a complete story. So the you are doing a complete three-act structure. You can try to hit those points that you have plotted, um, but it needs to be able to stand on its own structure. Also, the rest of this, I am going to post it online when we're done. So if you missed something, you can go back and listen to it just like I did last month, and I'm doing this month. As soon as I'm done recording, I will save it, and it'll take me a while to upload it to Vimeo or YouTube. It's YouTube, and then you can watch it there. See what you missed. Does anybody else have any questions? Any more? I'm here until I've answered every question from all of you. I will never give up. Never give up, never surrender. That is a quote from Galaxy Quest. All right. So it looks like we've answered all of our questions. We've gone over what is expected this week in our assignments. And I want to thank you for showing up and taking the time out of your busy weekday. And you know where to find me. My email is mtabb@fullsail.com. If you have any questions, I always get back to everybody in 24 hours, except sometimes on the weekend if I am out of reach or doing something that requires my work. Because I'm also writing a feature film for a producer right now, and I have to be able to do that too. Because otherwise, if I'm not doing what I'm teaching, I don't feel I should be teaching it. So I'm doing it. All right. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. It's a pleasure to speak with you. And I hope your writing goes beautifully well. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.